All right, wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us today, either live this this afternoon or listening to this afterwards. We're really thrilled to have three of our EVC OFAR faculty sharing their work. And you know, uh, the reason this is so interesting to other faculty is to hear that things change as you bring your work into the classroom and students respond and you make changes, and that's part of the process, and that it isn't something that gets set in stone. It's something that will continue to change over time. So thank you so much to all of you for coming. We just want to go over a few details since we don't meet regularly, and all of this information is in the course, but and we'll go through this as quickly as possible so we have time for the really important stuff here. I think you know all of us, and Liz and I are here today from CCCOER. Kim is here. I'm not sure. Oh, but I want to go to our coaches who are doing much of the really great work with all of you right now. And of course, we have Jamie Thomas. Jamie, are you with us this afternoon? Not sure if yeah, I know she was real busy. Anyway, Jamie, as you know, is our lead coach, but she also coaches 4 or 5 other faculty members and does some amazing work. There's also Alyssa Cooper, who I think many of you know as well, who works with us. There's Hasna Sadat Ahadi. You want to say hello, Hasna?
Hello, everyone. I can't wait to see all your action plans. It's going to be awesome.
Wonderful. And yeah, thank you, Hasna, for presenting last week at our other optional webinar on decolonizing your syllabus. And last but not least, Alan is here, who is also another one of our key coaches. Alan, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, just looking forward to seeing the presentations today, and then looking forward to seeing how all the action plans, end up at the end of this this fall semester. It's looking good so far.
Wonderful. And I know that all our coaches have been working really hard and trying to support all of you. And Kim, I didn't give you a chance to say hello. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Hi. Happy to be here. Like I keep saying in the chat, I'm just happy to see you all, even if it's your avatar photo that I'm familiar with. And Jamie's here. Jamie's here.
Oh, yay, Jamie. So glad you're here. I know you were running between things over the last week, so wonderful. So actually, we wanted to go through our calendar really quickly. Jamie, would you like to do this, or would you like me to?
Sure, I'd jump in. Just really appreciate everyone sticking with us this semester. This has been an experimental offering, and so we appreciate you working with us. But we've come through halfway point in the semester, and that's why we're here today with the action planning progress sharing webinar. Very excited. Elizabeth from my team is going to be one of the speakers today. We're asking for your second fall reflection on November 1st. And then we're hoping that becomes a great way of considering what's working, what would you like to share in our upcoming team showcase. You'll notice too that we have another kind of optional time for us to get together on Friday the 3rd with more examples from your action plans. Then we're asking for your final reflection on December 1st. That's kind of a way of drawing everything together. And just in time for a team showcase on Friday, December 8th, from 12 to 1:30. And we'll do that via Zoom as well. And for the team showcases, this is an opportunity for your team to have kind of prior or previously worked together and pulled together a presentation that draws upon highlights from the pedagogy and experiences of each person of your team. And it's totally doable and possible to pre-record those so that then we're well timed for the time limits that we have. We're asking that each team sort of keeps it to, I think, what was it, Una? I think about
10 minutes.
10 minutes or less, yeah. And that's so that we're able to kind of proceed through all of the teams and have enough time for comments and thoughts to share. And then we're wrapping up the semester, it looks like, with an open pedagogy workshop, December 15th, 12 to 1. That's an opportunity to kind of build upon what you've completed, achieved, cultivated the semester with a view towards, I think, the spring semester, or if you're doing a winter teaching session, that's a great way to kind of jumpstart and boost that up before you take your winter break. So I hope that was a decent summary there.
Yeah, that was great. The only thing I might add is the one next Friday, which is an optional one. It's some sample action plans. And so to give you, if you want to know what the discipline areas are, we have somebody from chemistry, somebody from child development, and somebody from ethnic studies. And they're from the cohort that went through last year. So we're going to hear not only what they did last year, but maybe how they're bringing it forward this year post participation. So thank you, Jamie. And you want to tell them about the team showcase, Jamie? Will that
Oh,
work?
yes. So again, we're trying to keep this to kind of a 10 minutes collectively per team. And what's exciting about this is I think it gives you all a chance, and us along with you, to reflect on what worked really well this semester. How did you change? How did your pedagogy change? And how have your students responded to what you've incorporated from our OFAR learnings? And so these are some guiding questions here, but we really ask that your team work together to pull together a presentation that speaks to all the great things you're doing. And since the teams are multidisciplinary this time, we think that'll kind of shake it up, keep it interesting. And we recommend that you pre-record so that we can kind of stick to our time limit. Were there any kind of questions here? Any thoughts? As it turns out, this works really well. And I think for some of the previous semesters, thanks to Liz and the team, we've been able to kind of record these presentations, but then also share them just within our limited group, so that any one of us can benefit from what's being shared.
Excellent. And okay. I think that's it. Thanks so much, Jamie. And now we want to turn it over to our faculty who have agreed to share. And I'm going to stop sharing here. And Elizabeth, take us through what you've been doing.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for just this opportunity to be able to come and share. I just want to give a shout out, first of all, to my president. Glad that she's here. And then also to Una and to Kim and to my team, awesome, phenomenal, Dr. Jamie Thomas. Thank you so much for just, taking us through this in such a phenomenal way. Really appreciate you. I have just a little bit to share. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get into that. I'm so excited to actually be part of this work. And yeah, I know that this is kind of where I belong. So yeah, I'll go ahead and just begin with, see if we can, yeah. So, moving too quickly. So I basically took on an approach, a different type of pedagogy approach, teaching approach, known as live learning. While I serve as a general English instructor, I also serve as the Emoja Affirm English instructor there at Evergreen Valley College. And so there is a practice that we do that's known as live learning. And so I decided, because anti-racism was going to be that type of course where it would need a little bit more latitude than the structure that we would normally have in an English course. So I took on this approach of live learning. And let me see, what is it doing here? There we go. So the thing about live learning is that it is a very risky, kind of freewheeling, open course. It's one that is student-centered. It's one that causes the instructor, everyone becomes uncomfortable at some point. The instructor basically is yielding a bit of control to the classroom, to the students, right? And it doesn't really offer extensive content. It is where you are walking in the classroom, and while as the instructor, I may have information that I have in my mind that I want to do. Anything can happen in the classroom. So this has been a very, very uncomfortable space for me as an English instructor, but at the same time, there have been some incredible things that have actually happened in this classroom all the way up until yesterday. And we don't have that. So I just wanted to kind of focus in on one of the practices, one of the activities that we dealt with, and then share with you a little bit, a few of the excerpts that have come from the students. Yeah, we're going to kind of take it from there. So, you know, there's a lot of text on this particular slide, but yeah, live learning, you got to be brave to take it on. So that's where we are. That's kind of the approach that we're taking in the class. And as opposed to, I chose to use the Moja class, but I also chose to use my general English 1A class, and it is working phenomenally in both of the classes. All right. So what I decided to do was I decided to set up 2 affinity groups. Now I understand that affinity groups are usually for the employed, right? For faculty and for staff and things, but I thought about it. I said, if we set up 2 different affinity groups, we'll get different types of responses. Let's see how students do when they are in a group where they have similar ethnic backgrounds, and then let's see how they do when they're in a group with different ethnic backgrounds, right? And so we're still kind of collecting that type of information, but the 4 groups that I chose to kind of organize was, first of all, the ethnicity of Black. However, and you all can see the different groups. So while we're saying Black, we're not just using just that term, but kind of placing different groups that identify in that Black category: the Indigenous, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx group, Caucasian group, and the Asian group. And what I found that was very, very interesting was that in my Affirm class, there was only one Caucasian male that identified as Caucasian. And in my general class, there was only one Black male that was there. So it was kind of interesting to work with both of these groups, or both classes, because there were different results or different viewpoints that came from both of the classes. So we started with the affinity groups. One of the main discussions that we really based most of our work on, obviously, was Ibram Kendi, right? And you know, the central premise. This is a quote that Erica Taylor talks about in one of her NPR articles, and she talks about this issue between not racist and anti-racist. And for whatever reason, this particular topic kind of just was highlighted. And I was surprised, because I was thinking, okay, well, you know, in the Affirm class, this may not necessarily be, you know, a hot topic. I don't know why I was thinking that way, but what actually happened was that this particular topic of what does it mean, what are we saying when we say that we're not racist, versus becoming an anti-racist. And both groups, both classes, they were really, really just kind of stuck on this idea of not racist is really coming down to you saying, to you showing that you're racist. And many of them actually began to kind of focus in on this. But, you know, basically here, Kendi says, and if I can just, I'm going to read this for a minute. There are 2 ways of being in the world. Racist, anti-racist may be difficult to conceive for those unwilling to relinquish the self-definition of not racist. That's because Kendi explains that not racist isn't really a thing. Kendi argues that not racist is a term that signifies neutrality, but there is no neutrality within the racism struggle. The opposite of racist isn't not racist. It is anti-racist. One either endorses the idea of racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. And so we did a discussion around this, and we basically talked about it in terms of what does it mean? Or we looked at various examples of what that would look like. Now, one thing that was really, really interesting was that in the first affinity group, and this was my first class, this is my general English 1A class. And I just, I was just taking pictures. I asked them, got their permission, and just basically asked them, what did they think about this whole idea of not racist and anti-racist? A lot of them were surprised to understand that if you say that you're not racist, you're really kind of moving toward, or you're really kind of sitting in a racist posture. They were really, really just kind of surprised by that. But this is one of the groups discussing this idea of what it means to be not racist versus anti-racist. And I'm going to show you some of the excerpts that actually came from both classes in a moment. But I just wanted to show you. So this was kind of like a compilation of Affinity Group 1, right, where they were kind of talking. Let's go on to the next one. And this is actually in the Emoji Affirm class, and you're looking at a group, Affinity Group 2, to kind of discussing the difference between this idea of not racist and anti-racist as well. And basically the way that the course, the activity went, we basically just set up, just various questions that we had, and they talked about them. What happened after the group, there was one particular recorder, and the recorder basically wrote down everything, and they submitted that work through discussion. So we were able to kind of record that and keep the information that they were sharing. Okay. And we're just getting started. There's a lot more. They have a research group project coming up, but we're just getting started. We really are just getting started. Okay. And so if you all don't mind, what I would like to just kind of share with you, I know this is a lot of text, but I'm an English teacher. What can you say, right? So I would like to share with you just a couple of the excerpts that came from their first papers. These papers were, what I basically did academically was I talked to them about their pre-writing, and they did responses to different activities. And as I said, this was just one activity. We did many. And so what I asked them to do was to set up this first paper almost as a narrative, right? But they were doing it according to like just reflecting on this idea of being not racist versus being anti-racist. These are just some of their excerpts. It says, for if we cannot bring ourselves to the table to have those uncomfortable and difficult conversations, then racism will continue to grow and fester in society. Ibram X. Kendi says in an interview that if we don't actively seek to be anti-racist, that the racism will persist. We must continue to educate and discuss the topic of racism and its effects to all racist groups continually. This was from the African-American male that was in my general English 1A class. He shared that. The next one, as an individual, being able to take accountability and unlearn racist views. Sorry. Okay. I can't see it. As well as using your voice and actions to hold people around you accountable and calling out behavior. And this isn't perfect. I wrote it as it is. In today's society, I think we are all capable of being anti-racist and furthering growth, not just in ourselves, but as a community. So that was one of the Latino males in the first English course, the general English course. Okay, this was one of my Afro-Latina males or students in my Emoja class. Anti-racism has shown me that doing this is a part of the problem, because doing nothing is just as bad as doing the evil act. I was like, whoa, okay. While I agree doing nothing is bad, I don't believe my hesitancy to entertain these issues makes me racist. While I understand the nature of anti-racism is to acknowledge your faults and change so, in a sense, it is lenient in allowing moments of weakness, but it still feels very unforgiving to me. Not perfect, it's okay. I'm a minority, but I do not think about my oppressed state very often. And I would not call myself a freedom fighter. I do not deny the oppression itself or invalidate the oppression of others. And if the occasion came up, I would do my best to go against racial prejudice. It just simply doesn't happen very often around me. I can also acknowledge that I have a lot of privilege that plays into why that is so. Okay, and so those are just 3 examples of what students were saying. There were some incredible essays that actually came through, but I wanted to make sure that I kind of showed, that everyone isn't always ready to just kind of jump into the work, but it's important for them to be informed about what anti-racism is all about, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I shared those that are saying, yeah, I want to go, but also those that are a bit hesitant and saying, I'm not ready to stand up and just go after this. I'm in the process. And like I said, there were so many incredible papers that came out of this, and I was blown away just by the work that students produced. And so with that, what were some of the glitches that I ran into? I had a few glitches, and then I had a few successes. And the one that happened yesterday, I had to share, but some of the glitches were that with Affinity Group 2, there was a constant regrouping because, students don't always come, right? And so there absences due to whatever. So there was this constant regrouping. And so what that did was that I had to kind of make sure that I recorded the different people that were in the groups, but also regroup so that Affinity Group 2 was really able to have a substantive conversation. It was, that was going to be really, really necessary. And so I've run into that. So I'm working on that, recording different people as they come in or as they're not there, making sure that they know where they're supposed to be and when we're doing group work. Also with the identity privilege wheels, I did that the second week. And students seemed hesitant. Now, we had gone through and done a safe space agreement. We had set that up as a class in both of the classes, and everyone was fine with that. And I was going to show you guys we did it as a flyer type thing for the class, but they seemed hesitant when we started doing the identity wheels and the privilege wheels. I'm thinking from an instructor's point of view, and when we went through the identity privilege wheels, there's no problem. But it kind of caught me off guard to understand that, yes, students may not necessarily be ready to just kind of jump into talking about their identity and talking about their privilege. And in the first class, we have 3 Caucasian students. They were really, really uncomfortable. In the second class, we only had 1. And I basically kind of spent time with him to give him comfort around this whole idea of the identity wheel. And we did the identity and privilege wheels in Affinity Group 1. So everyone was kind of grouped with their own ethnicities. So in both classes, I spent time with the Caucasian groups, because I wanted them not necessarily so that I could speak, but so that they could feel comfortable enough to be transparent and to assure them that this wasn't a time to point them out and to try to point the finger at them, right? And you're racist. No. This was a time for us to really begin to understand the work of anti-racism, us coming together, right? And beginning to form our own small community and understanding this type of work, if you will. So those were two of the glitches that I kind of came into, and people did not want to be transparent across the board. It didn't matter what ethnicity they did not want to be transparent at all. So we spent I think about a week and a half just to get through the identity and the privilege wells. I was just like, wow, this is really crazy, you know. But yeah, we were able to finally kind of go there. But I think that it was really a matter of just being able to share.
And Elizabeth,
Yes.
yeah, we're looking forward to hearing your successes too.
Yes.
But yeah, if you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry, I just want to give
almost done.
time to everyone. This is
Yes.
wonderful. I mean, we could listen to you for all the entire hour.
Almost done. And so my awareness moments, and I put it, this actually happened on yesterday, and I told one of the students, I said, do you mind if I share what happened? But we were having a discussion around why Indigenous nations do not want to be identified, or why Indigenous females do not want to be identified as Latina. And the discussion transitioned into labels, talking about the labels that have been created. And it moved into a discussion into LGBTQ communities. One of the students of color actually began to use labels that were not correct in the LGBTQ community and was corrected in the class. And then she began to kind of share, well, you know, this is what I've always known. And she came to the realization, oh my God, this is what we've been talking about this whole time. You know, that we have to be ready to kind of transition and to change our labels. And then out of the classroom, and I'm done, out of the classroom, a non-binary student and an African-American male, they had actually kind of disagreed in the classroom. And I was walking to my car, and as I was walking to my car, I saw them meeting and talking outside of the classroom. That was huge for me. So I was just like, yes, this is exactly what we want to do. And so that was it. That's just basically where we are right now. So once again, thank you. And if anyone has any questions, yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, really amazing. And are you comfortable sharing your slides? Oh, okay. Yeah, Liz will probably ask you for those, so because we'll post them with the recording. So thank you so much. And I know this is really exciting to hear what the progress you've made in your class and those really deep conversations. I know people probably have comments for Elizabeth, but we're just running a little over time. So please, I think, put them in the chat window if you're comfortable, or you can contact Elizabeth, I'm sure. I want to move on to our next speaker, which is Adam. Let me see. Do we see Adam here?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm just saying, I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see it now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I had a number of different things. First of all, is my sound okay? Can everyone hear me okay? All good. Okay. Started off kind of a number of different things associated with this course. First of all, I teach general biology. It has a few more, I think, restrictions than some other courses, in that it has a very significant content component that can't vary too much. And it's also a course that I teach along with a number of other faculty. So I can't make unilateral changes to the course without it affecting the consistency in which the sections are taught. With that said, one of the things, so what I largely focused on for this was access. One of the big challenges with science courses in general is expense. They have expensive textbooks. There's potential that you have to have certain equipment. So there's that component of it, as well as the component of, I felt it was really important that students felt like they were a part of the course. They were a part of this type of discipline, which unfortunately has been probably one of the greatest challenges we've had in science in general, is that it has largely been, people that look like me, right? Middle-aged white guy doing science. So how can we address that? How can we change that to a certain extent? So first and foremost, I recognize an opportunity with a lab manual. We had a kind of a traditional lab manual from a publisher. It varied a lot in prices, but let's say roughly $70 or so for the lab manual. So that's separate from the text. So an additional $70 each semester. And I felt like we could create our own that has something that we can manage ourselves, edit ourselves, update, etc., and make it free. So I worked on that over the summer. It's going to take a couple of renditions probably before I feel like it's done, but we were able to implement it this fall. So it was a lab manual that's used for all the sections, not just mine. I teach 4. There's 12 sections of the course this semester. There's roughly around 700 students a year that take this course. So the estimate there is a savings of about $49,000 a year for students overall. And so that was one component, take away that cost. For my sections, I also transitioned over to OpenStax for the lecture text. So at this point now, the course is free. There's not other than the enrollment, there's no text course for text cost, for the course. So that eliminated a fair bit of cost for them, hopefully making it a bit more accessible, a little bit easier in terms of attending class and completing it. So you're seeing here just my Canvas shell, just kind of the general, pretty typical course modules. A lot of this coming from Edit 22. Probably the one aspect of this is I haven't yet had a chance to decolonize the syllabus. I do hope to do that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the workshop that Hosna had on the topic because we had a department meeting on program review that went over, so I couldn't get to both. So I'm hoping to do that still with the syllabus. I've started to incorporate a few things like in an extra credit assignment. One of the components I included as something in here. I want to see how this plays out, how many students choose this, and see if this can become an assignment unto itself. Is a researcher like me. And so the idea is for them to look for biologists, people that are doing work in the field that might be similar to them in whatever aspect they choose, and write a little something about it. So right now it's just extra credit, but it is something that we might turn into something else. For the lab manual, I've created a Canvas shell that all of the faculty that teach Biology 21 can access, so they can download everything to their course shell, but they can also communicate through feedback, so I can get input on how things are going. One of the things I did include was a lab manual introduction. And so within this is just some orientation, but then I also go into the concept of like, who is a biologist, to try to fundamentally address the things that they feel. And I happened to come across this quote that I thought was kind of interesting. It said, "In the perception of society, my athletic talents are genetic. I'm a likely mugger/rapist. My academic failures are expected, and my academic successes are attributed to others. To spend most of my life fighting these attitudes levies an emotional tax that is a form of intellectual emasculation." And this was written by Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. So, I mean, the concept being is, here's somebody they've probably heard of, they've probably seen, and he's reflecting on his experience as a scientist to help them understand that, look, we have to acknowledge the fact that this is how often we're perceived. And here I am basically at the top of the game in terms of science. And, I'm still reflecting on this, as well as a couple of good, I think, talks through TED Talks have often been a great source for students and things like that, looking at different aspects of what it means to be a biologist, and the fact that they aren't associated with gender or race. They aren't even associated with IQ. They're associated more with things like tenacity and resilience, and how do you build that, and anybody can do that. It doesn't have to be a particular type of person. And the fact is science benefits from diversity. As a matter of fact, it's kind of one of the cornerstones of biology, is to appreciate and variation. That's how we evolve. So hopefully that part gets across. to give you an idea of what the lab manual looks like, this is what the Canvas pages look like. There's background reading for each lab, so that this is all free and accessible to them. They don't have to buy a textbook separate for this. This is a lab we're doing next week on fungi and bryophytes and things like that. And then what this also allows us to do is we can incorporate components that can draw students to the diversity within the discipline. For example, here's a YouTube on really a great aspect of research and how trees actually can communicate with each other through mycorrhizal fungi. But it happens to also be done by a female scientist, who worked in a very male dominated field of forestry and had to struggle quite a bit to do that, but then actually has fundamentally changed the way we look at biology. Anybody who's seen the movie Avatar, James Cameron got that concept of the planet talking to itself from this work. So here's somebody that's changing things even in our kind of modern societal view of the world. In addition to that, these are fungi and bryophytes are often they can be very academic, they're very biology related, so how do you sometimes make them a bit more relevant to students? So things like mycoremediation and the use of fungi to clean up polluted areas, that has become increasingly common, especially after severe weather events. Think of what happened to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and the fact that poor communities were then left not only with devastation of their community, but now they had oil and gas and stuff impregnated in the soil, and groups were coming in and actually helping remediate that using fungi. So a knowledge of biology could actually also be kind of community activism, as well as trying to create links to scientists that are possibly a little bit more similar to our students. I think it's interesting that for the most part, it's actually not hard to find this anymore. It used to be when I was in college, definitely more white male dominated, but that has actually changed a bit and making students aware of that. So that's in there. And we can make these types of pages a lot more relevant and local to our students. We can incorporate things as we learn from our students, the types of things they're most interested in. So at the very least, it's also free. They get worksheets that they can print out themselves. So this really becomes the only cost to them, is actually printing out the worksheet to bring to class. And I also print out a fair number of those. So in case students don't have a printer, access to one, they can get it in class. So it's worked out well so far. It's a little hard to assess, the impact yet, because, there's a lot more to it when you incorporate an entire lab manual. So there's that component. The other things that weren't initially in my action plan, though, that I've also found I think were going to be interesting, was one, snacks. I would have thought of it, but providing food every lab has been critical for these students. I've spent over $1,500 in the last year and a half on snacks. They eat a grocery bag of snacks a week in my classes, and they come in, they grab a snack, they go out, they grab a snack in the middle of the lab, they're grabbing a snack, going outside eating. Our students are hungry. And I think they really appreciate the fact that they don't have to ask. There's just a bag there. They grab food and, on the way in, on the way out. We're working with Basic Needs now to see if they can fund some of this, because I think we're going to see a lot more faculty are going to realize their students are hungry coming to class. Some work I've done in the past, so I kind of knew this to be the case, but it really, that simple basic aspect of providing food ends up being really important to helping students feel like they belong, that we hear them, that we commiserate, and we want them to succeed. And then the last thing that's kind of come actually from analyzing grades and SLOs over the last year and this coming semester is a lot of our students are coming in unprepared. And so I think we're going to need to do something on our end, and it's either something like a week 0 or literally like a half unit or unit class that students can take and coordination with courses like general biology that teaches them how to study. They don't have the skill set. I think COVID really hindered them. And I think a lot of our students, especially those that are kind of non-traditional students, are really struggling figuring out, how do I study science? I don't know about the rest of you, but I see a lot more students. The way they take notes is to take pictures with their phone. They don't actually write anything down. They don't have the study skills. They don't know how to read a textbook and reflect on it and kind of anticipate questions. And so I think there's going to be a component of that that's going to also improve access and helping students feel like they can do biology regardless of where they come from, is to give them a little bit more of that support. So we're still trying to kind of figure out how that might work, but that may end up being another component of this. Okay, Una, let me know. Am I good? Was that
Yeah.
okay?
You're good, but you're pretty much done.
Okay, that's it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. Boy, both. I can see that there's so many wonderful faculty stories. All right. We are now going to turn it over to Lee.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Let's see whether I can share my screen. Y'all can see, I hope.
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. Let's see. Well, first of all, thank you for having this opportunity to share where I am in my progress and what I've learned so far. So if you remember when we, after taking the course and doing the course, it's just so many new concepts throwing at you. I was like, oh my gosh, this is on one hand, I know a lot of that. On some other hand, I said, oh my gosh, how could anybody doing all of this? So it's like, where do I start? What are the low hanging fruit? So what I was thinking, so yes, I did what my coach told me, do short term, medium term, and long term. So in this sharing moment here, I just want to focus on what my framework is, how I go about picking and choosing what I want to try and what I thought is possible, and focus on what I have done and try in this semester so that I can learn what I have to do. So I start with the end in mind. And this is what I get away from all that concept is like, how you as an educator become culturally responsive and make it relevant for your student. And these are the three things that we have. Of course, we always want them to be successful, but we want them to be able to have more positive mindset. And then we also want them to be able to critique other and recognize equity issues without making them feel uncomfortable. As if they should feel guilty because they have something, or they should feel angry because they don't have something. So those are the three things that kind of anchor me in terms of looking at my course that I teach. So I teach computer CIT 10. It's about management information system. So it's pretty technical course, but it's for business student or non-computer science students. So it's kind of like you're in between. You want to give them enough technical information so they know how things work, but you don't want it to go so far down the weed, because you want them to become much more a business professional, how they can be competitive in the workforce. So I look at my course content. So for those of you at EVC, you already know I am nuts about OER. So I already adopt and write my own. So I want to go beyond what I was doing with OER. And I look at what are the opportunities in my course that both low and high risk opportunities that allow me to integrate the anti-racist pedagogy without being so in the face of the student, because this is the technology course. So I want them to be very comfortable talking about technology, but through this kind of lens. And so then that leads me to say, what would be the stress point? Thinking from a student standpoint, how can they be not just student focused, but whole student focused? What are their stress points in my course? Is it the way I write my instruction, the assignment, or whatever? What are the frequency of those stress points? How can I relieve the stress and use those as opportunity for them to learn? And of course, being selfish, I also look at what are my stress points in doing all of this, and how can I help relieving some of my stress point as well. So what's ending up is that for this fall I pick these four things. Most of you already talked about using the wheel identity. I use it as a low-hanging fruit in my orientation class, and I want to share with you and how I kind of just adapted just change a few words to make it become a more integrated topic discussion of technology and identities and inequities. And I change. I go through all my writing instruction, and reframe wherever I think there's punitive statement into much more supportive, empathic statement. And then I pick 1 or 2 weekly discussion and see what I can change and frame it and experiment and see how the result look like. And I will share with you some of that. And I put into some effort to redesign a couple of assignments that students had trouble. They find it challenging in the past. So I said, how do I do that? Maybe turn those into non-disposable assignment. If they complained before, maybe it can only be better. so that's where I start. So those are the 4 areas that I kind of focus in this semester. So before I use for the orientation, I just kind of run through quickly the before and after. Before I use the identity wheel in the orientation, I have to tell you, I feel embarrassed showing you this because what I had before was very boring. I just get them, ask them to introduce themselves and blah, blah, blah. And then after I introduce this, I just kind of do an excerpt. So before, when I did that boring version of orientation, this is typical, right? I took out their name, things like that, but I hope you don't see it. You can't see it. But they introduce their name, blah, where they are, and that's it. And nothing more than that. And the typical reply is most students only reply once. And you see on the right side, nice to see you, blah, blah. That's it. And so it's very boring. It's text motivation to be able to stay engaged with the student because nobody really wants to engage with each other. So this is after I use it. So you can see I adapt most of the course that what we learned. So nothing changes except for this last thing. I say I want to integrate with the course topic. I don't want it to be a separate thing. I want it to be every week we be able to talk about this as often we can. So then what happened after that? Oh my gosh, it was just, I was blown away because, and this is only a short version. There's so many, some of them wrote like a book in terms of talking about their experience and how technology changed them or vice versa, how they grew up with or without technology. And this is a typical reply, very supportive with each other. They are sharing the experience, and they keep coming back. Some of them like having a multi layers of discussion. I find myself signing on every day to read and reply because their story was so incredible, and so it helped giving the student, they come to like the class come from a very diverse background, and yet they actually come to some kind of consensus where technology can help equalize some of the privilege or lack of privilege they have. So it's just that 1 week, the week 1 experiment, I was blown away how such a simple idea, simple discussion could do that. So then what do I do with how I do a free frame some of my statement I call punitive statement. If you don't do this, you get 0 or things like that. So how do I do that? So where one of the stress point was, of course, the midterm, which they just went through. I usually give them a study guide and I tell them all the things they should or should not do. So here's an example of what I used to write. I still try to be nice, but it's still, like this sentence here, even if it's unintentional, you will get a 0 for the entire exam and a report to the school, right? So it's very, I always feel bad when I write this kind of punitive statement. And so then after I reframe it, I show it's a lot more supportive, and I give them pointer to how to avoid this kind of situation. So anything that seemed negative, I turn around more like a reminder and point them to a solution. And so what I find is that I don't know by coincidence or what, but with this new midterm, I received a lot less questions from the study guide. Maybe I give them a false sense of for security. I don't know, but I was very surprised. But the other thing is that I personally feel so much better of writing it because I constantly worry about, am I too flexible? Am I not flexible enough? Do I make it clear so they don't come back and say, you didn't tell me this? So personally, because I feel better, I think I'm more relaxed, and the way I write and interacting with students, a little bit more open-minded. So that just, and so I kind of do this through the weekly discussion as well. But that's just an example how I kind of go back and reframe a lot of the statements. So these are the two assignments that I want to turn it into a non-disposable assignment. So before that, I would say that now that in this context, it was a disposable assignment before I change it. So this is teaching them how to use Excel and look at large data sets and turn that into visual. So you can see, I teach them to the learning outcome, what they need to do, what they have to draw graphs and all of that. But nothing really that's relate to them personally. So this is an example where, again, I link to what the discussion on equities issues on the orientation. I have them looking at data on jobs by gender, by occupation, part-time status, by age, and all those things that was kind of driven on the equity chart. And so after they learn and talk, so they can see that instead of in your equity, in your privilege area, where do you think that does it match with the jobs or not, right? And then I have them select their own job area, and so they can see that. So this is some of the students. This always been implemented, and this is one of the assignment that they had trouble in the past. They learn it, but they said this is too hard. Why do I need to do all of this and all of that? Why do I have to learn how to use graphs and things? But then I blown away. This has just happened last week as I grade them. They said, this activity is a good assignment. This is the first time I heard a student tell me about this assignment is a good student, and they said it takes time, but they want to do it. And what I really so rewarding that they said it's allowed them to see things in different perspective, and it's also allowed them to experiment looking at what's really interested to them. Like some of the students a little bit older, they want to look at how age would make it a problem for them, so they can find out in their job that they want to do, they want to pursue, where they can help themselves in the right place to look for a job as they finish the course. And this last one is the big assignment at the end, which is they're going to have it next week. It's really, this is where we talk about global digital divide. And so one of the assignment is that, so this is before that, I just have them discuss about this, what they can do, very generic. But now what they're going to see next week is that I want them to go off and collect any old used computer parts and cables, anything from their house or from their friends. Go find a place to donate or recycle. Calculate it using this very simple formula, how they calculate the waste that they have saved, and talk about, do they feel good about doing that or not? And then this is the part where they do a lot of discussion, is connecting their personal e-waste amount to the broader issues of e-waste and global digital divide. How, their own contribution to the world, how does that help? And based on what they have contributed, how much could help another country or another group? Because some of these discharge waste, e-waste, are really being repurposed for other underserved community. All smartphone is a new smartphone for another student, for another country. Then, so we're talking about their own contribution to help with this. So this it helped them to see that they're becoming a global citizen, and their one action could really help some of the equity issues in their own local community, but it's also as a global level as well. So I'm really excited to see how they respond to this one, because this is kind of integrate a lot of the chapters they talked about, and it's also kind of put me a little bit more uncomfortable position. They have to do something, and they have to really see how they connect their experience with helping resolving some of these digital divide. that's pretty much where I am. So I will see. So far, I get some pretty good responses. I will see whether I have a midterm anonymous survey coming up soon. So I'd love to see what they have to say after that. I'm sure they want to see that after I return their midterm grade. But it's one of the challenges always, the more you write longer instruction, some students find it's too lengthy. So I always try to balance between the length of the instruction to be supportive versus just use bullet style and tell them, here, this is what you do. So that's kind of where I am. I try to do a little bit of each type of assignment to see which one work out best. And then I expect I will continue to fine tune as I go along for the next semester. That's all I have to share. I hope I stick to the time.
Thank you, Lee. That was also amazing. And there's wonderful comments in the chat window for all three of our presenters who did just an outstanding presentations and sharing with us. I know that some of you will have to run in a minute because we're just about to hit the hour, but we did want to leave this option for others who might want to share. There was a lot of different themes in the October reflections, and so Liz and I, and I'm sure a few of our other folks can hang on here if you'd like to share something or like to get feedback or even give feedback to our three presenters today.
This was so inspiring. I put in the chat. Una, thanks. I started, but I have to leave because I'm presenting to a group, but I wanted to be here. My gosh, I just am filled with so much love and gratitude for you all. And I know I haven't heard everybody, but it was just fire, like really grateful for all of you. So thank you. Keep the good work. I can't wait to elevate and celebrate what you're doing with the larger campus community too very soon. So thank you so much. Sorry to have to leave. Okay. Love you. Love you. Bye. Okay.
Thanks so much, Tamil. Wow. How many college presidents come to faculty presentations? You guys are pretty lucky. Thank you all. And I'm sorry that we didn't have time for everyone to present today. I mean, we would have been here for several hours, but boy, that's really amazing. And I hope that you're getting time in your teams maybe to present as well. I know that that Alan and Hassan and the rest of our coaches are doing amazing jobs. Alyssa and who popped in as well.